Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm Steven right here today with a scale figure review. This is possibly my last scale figure review for year 2023. This figure review was supposed to come out way back in late November, but it has been pushed back over and over because of sudden changes, like there are news I need to cover more urgently, like the Chinese authorities going after sexy anime figures, for example. Yeah, it is things like that that can push back some other videos that I had planned way advanced, right? As for this scale figure right in front of me, we are looking at Amakuni's 1/7 scale Brunhilde Lancer class servant from Fate's Grand Order. She was released way back in February 2023. And what took me so long to purchase this figure, right? I purchased it back in November, right? It is all about timing when it comes to buying FGO figures, because if you are patient enough, you are going to get a huge bargain for the figures you buy, especially with FGO in this case. When this figure went on pre-order about a year ago, my biggest complaint was very simple. The limited version was way too overpriced, right? I can't remember the pricing of the standard version. I think it was around 21 or 22,000 yen. But the limited edition, which is the one right in front of me, this is going for over 27,000 yen. 27,000 yen plus just a year ago was very expensive. It is equivalent to about 35,000 yen in today's currency, right? And I could not justify pre-ordering this one for full price. And even after the figure was released, I decided to wait on a bit longer because I predicted that the price would fall, and my prediction came true. So how much did I pay for this figure in November 2023? Well, in November, there was this discount campaign. We call it Singles Day Sale, which falls on 11th of November every year, right? It is very similar to Black Friday sales in every other part of the planet, in the US and so on. We have our Singles Day Sale 11/11. I got this figure, the limited version, for only 949 Chinese yuan. 949 yuan is about 19,300 Japanese yen. So this is a nice 7,000 plus yen of discount. That is huge. That is 30+% of discount for a limited edition deluxe version scale figure. And this is one example out of so many examples in the past why I always tell you guys who want FGO stuff to wait until after release and wait for it to bargain bin, because that was exactly what happened to this figure of Brunhilde, as well as a lot of the other figures I bought. It happened to Moderate by Good Smile, it happened to Ereshkigal Gal by Max Factory, it happened to a lot of the FGO figures I bought, right? And I saved a lot of money just by waiting for a few months after release before buying one. Why was I confident that this figure will bargain bin? I was like 100% confident about it. Because this character is really niche. It is not a very popular character in FGO. And not to mention, this is also one of the most underrated figures I have reviewed all year this year. I think by the end of this year, when I come up with a video of my awards for the best or worst figures of the year that I purchased throughout 2023, this figure is going to make it into the list for being the best in one of the categories I will come up with, right? I was really impressed with this figure. To me, this thing was so underrated that after I checked out this figure in detail to check for flaws and so on, my opinion of the figure's pricing of 27,000 yen changed a bit. Like, 27k for this wasn't really that bad at all. After seeing what this figure actually is like in person, it is that good. However, as much impressed as I am with this figure, she is not without her flaws. But before we get into the details of the sculpting and the paintwork of this figure, a quick mention about two things: the box and the assembly process. Okay. So this is what her box looks like. Amakuni has been doing non-windowed box for a while already, so I'm not surprised by this box design over here. Quite tough, quite solid, and this box is not very easy to dent, though it is not as tough as some of the other Good Smile boxes, like the Hatsune Miku figure I just reviewed a few weeks ago. Yeah, that one had a harder box than this one, but this is still very good nonetheless. And I would rate this maybe 9 out of 10 in packaging. Not bad, but not perfect. And as usual with FGO figures, they all come with giant boxes for some reason. This thing is huge, right? So shipping cost is going to cost you quite a bit. For me, because I purchased this figure from China, shipping cost from China to my country is cheaper than shipping the same thing from Japan to China. So there is additional savings over there. I paid like 200 or 220 Chinese yuan to ship this figure by express shipping to my country, and I received her in 5 days or so. So that is quite a good shipping price, a good cost for something this big, the box over here. Okay, and as for the assembly process of this figure, I would say it was relatively straightforward. I was a bit concerned by how difficult it would be to put this figure together, because Good Smile gives me a ton of that sort of experience where their figures are kind of difficult to assemble. This one was relatively straightforward. I had no difficulties putting all the parts together, though if there was one thing that is extremely annoying, it has to be her spear. Yeah, because her spear is supported by this one plastic rod, which I absolutely despise, but somehow figure brands continue to do stuff like this, perhaps because that is what Japanese figure collectors prefer. My personal guess is that Japanese figure collectors, they want the main figure to be perfect in a way. There are no unnecessary parts sticking out and there are no holes in it either. I would have preferred there to be a pack on the spear over here and it would plug right into her left hand. Yeah, perhaps the pack would be quite small, but that is what I would personally prefer. But I suspect that, yeah, the Japanese don't like it. That is one of my guesses over here. So they decided to put this really loose and flimsy spear into her right hand. Right? It is very loose actually, loose fitting as you can see. Okay, and this hand is not even holding the spear. It is not plugged in. You need this you need this stand. Ouch. You need this stand to support the spear. See? That is the most frustrating part about this figure. And it is so easy to knock over this thing. Give me a second while I put it back into place. Right? This is arguably the biggest flaw of this figure. See? Oh man, I really hate this so much. This will not win my best or favorite figure of the year award, but maybe in some other categories it'll win an award, because I have several categories to rate figures on for this year's awards at year end in the final week of this month. Do watch out for that video. This is so... And you know, the problem here is that if you keep knocking over this spear and it keeps landing head first down into your table surface, who knows, it might blunt or distort the end of your edge of your spear a bit over time if this happens too frequently. So that is one thing to think about. Or maybe if you can find a way to come up with a unique supporting rod or anything you can think of for that spear, that would be a better solution than what they provided over here. But if you look beyond that, this figure is incredible. Also, regarding the assembly process, right? Every single part on this figure, they fit very nicely. They are neither too tight nor too loose, so the part fitting quality control is excellent on this one. The connection between the foot peg at the base and the main figure is also just right, not overly tight, but firm enough. So if I were to take apart this figure again and put her back into the box, maybe for transportation, not an issue, I think. It is not excessively tight, and this is what I prefer. I don't like it when parts are overly tight because it is difficult to disassemble the figure later in case I need to transport it for any reason. Moving on to the actual figure itself, sculpting. This is a figure where you need to look at it with your own eyes in person in order to be able to appreciate this figure over here. The details on her armor, the sculpting on her face, everything is exquisite. It turns out way better than what I was expecting because, you know, we all have our own expectations and we judge a figure initially based on product pictures. And I feel like the product pictures is not showing us the full picture of this figure in a really good way. Because when you get this figure, you unbox it, you put it together, you will be pleasantly surprised by how good it looks in person. Right? This is no faint praise over here. The sculpting on this figure, I would say this is a 9.5 out of 10, or I wouldn't even hesitate to give it a full 10 out of 10 score for the sculpting. The face on this figure, this is something subjective, And one of the main reasons why this figure is not very popular among FGO collectors, because yeah, she looks kind of sad, kind of depressed over here. She looks like one of those very accomplished warriors, fighters or knights who are really good at fighting. They beat everyone, they defeat everyone, but somehow she is still depressed because maybe she is not being challenged by anyone worthy in the past 50 years. Yeah, this kind of plot where I see it very often in anime. Yeah, when you are too good at something, you'll become depressed because you don't feel any challenge anymore. Yeah, so she gives off that kind of vibe when you look at her face expression over here. Moving on to the paint work on this figure. This is where I'm even more impressed the more I look at this figure, because there are virtually no flaws at all on the paintwork on this figure. You see, combined with the sculpting and the paintwork, I could understand why this thing cost 27,000 yen. I think Amakuni set a really high bar on this figure, but not every one of us could understand what they were going for. And now that I have the actual figure in front of me, I'm so happy with what I got over here that it got me thinking maybe I should have purchased this figure sooner. But purchasing it later, 10 months later, is not necessarily a bad decision because I was going for value of money, you know. There are no paint bleeding, no scratches, no paint transfer, no ugly seam lines, no glue stains, none at all of this on this figure, no matter where you look. In front, behind the figure, even underneath her hair over here, one would expect any figure brand to cut corners because, you know, the hair is covering her back, so maybe we do lesser of a good job on the back of the figure and nobody would realize or care. No, that is not the case over here. Everything is painted to perfection with this figure. If there is one minor complaint, very minor one about this figure, it has to be the spear over here, right? It is separated into two parts, so there is a very obvious seam line over there, which is mostly hidden inside her wrist when you put the spear together. So not really a big issue over there. As for the base of this figure, to me it feels like overkill, it feels unnecessary. This LED base over here, which I did not purchase a battery for the base, right? So I couldn't show you how the base looks like lighted up because I did not purchase any batteries for this base. Of course, when you buy the figure, you take the base out from the box. There are no batteries included because it would complicate the shipping process where, you know, air cargo nowadays, they don't allow lithium batteries or even non-rechargeable batteries. It becomes a problem. So batteries are not included with the figure. And I did not even bother to put one inside there because to me, having a blue light shining up on the figure, not only it makes the figure less attractive, I'm not sure if there is any negative effect on the figure. However, you don't really turn on the LED 24/7 anyway, so I doubt it is an issue, but if you want to be safe, don't turn it on. And if you don't turn on the LED and display the figure that way, it defeats the purpose of buying the limited version, right? Which is why I think that this base is excessive, unnecessary, and the wrong base for this figure. If you were to ask me why light can negatively affect a figure, it is mainly has to do with the paint job where certain types of light frequency can cause ionization of the paint used in the figure, and then they will disintegrate, they will degrade over time and the figure's paint begins to fade. The best example is sunlight, right? Ultraviolet rays, it causes the paint to ionize and degrade. And whether this blue color LED will have the same effect, I have no idea because blue LED is used to cure resin. Yeah, like cure resin. So there is a possible risk over there, so be mindful about displaying this figure with the LED light turned on at all times. If Amakuni wanted to charge us extra for a limited edition base, just give us a diorama base, like you have rocks around, some sand, and even come up with additional parts on the base where it would support that spear indirectly instead of relying on that one single plastic rod. That would be the better way to do it. One more thing I have forgotten to bring up this figure is the height could be a problem for some of you, depending on what your display cabinet is like. If you take a look at the full height from the bottom of the base all the way to the top of a spear over here, 42 centimeters, and I believe some display cabinets they max out at 40 centimeters for each segment. So this is a bit too tall for that, but you can always remove this LED base below and the problem would be solved. Since I don't recommend you guys to turn on the LED anyway for this figure, right? And if I were to exclude this base over here, purely the height of this base all the way to the top of the spear, it is around 34 centimeters, and not including the spear, the figure's head height is 26, which is still pretty tall for a 1/7 scale. So at the end of this review today, can I recommend this figure of Brunhilde at bargain bin prices and absolute yes for any FGO collectors, or you just love high quality scale figures and you don't mind collecting any character from any game or franchise? It is a really good purchase, right? The face of this Brunhilde figure is going to be the most polarizing part about this figure. Some people will love it, some people will hate it. For me, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of her face expression, which is partly why I delayed for so long before I purchased one. And that is all for today's figure review. If you enjoyed it and you found this review helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to this channel for more detailed, high quality anime figure reviews as well as weekly news. Until then, I'll see you guys again very soon. Goodbye.